am excited to be here this morning to have a chance to talk to y'all about the website namethatplant.net. And people sometimes ask me whatever possessed me to embark on such a impossible project. And that's kind of a long story, but I'm going to touch on a couple things. And one is, as Babs mentioned, the love of wild plants, the love of the natural areas has been with me since I was a little girl. And I really want people to share that love, and the only way you're going to love something is if you can get to know it, because you don't really just love things that you aren't acquainted with. So I want to share that. And it seems like that today they've come up with a word now called the green blur. And the green blur refers to just all the vegetation that we drive by, but we never even stop to look at it. But if we would look, you know, this blur is made up of individuals, and these individuals have names, and they each have a part to play in a marvelously complex system that we live in. And it's just something that you never can learn enough about. But another reason that I built the website is because I needed it. I really wish that my head would hold all the knowledge that the website displays, but it doesn't. And so I've got a place to look it up. And the net in the name is there to remind us of the network of people who do know this stuff, who are experts, who have contributed their knowledge to the building of the site. The name of the site is Native and Naturalized Plants of the Carolinas and Georgia. And sometimes people ask me, what is a native plant? And I think generally people consider plants to be native if they lived in this particular region before the coming of Europeans to America. And so obviously a plant that comes from Europe is not native to this area, but equally a plant from Arizona might not be native to this area, even though it is native to North America. A naturalized plant is a plant that's come from somewhere else, and it's jumped ship. It's no longer, it was brought here either accidentally or horticulturally. It's in the garden, or maybe it was just in packing material. But it's now growing, reproducing on its own, spreading on its own without assistance from humankind. So it's on its own. Honeysuckle. We think of that, and that's everywhere, but it came from, Asia. But that's naturalized. It's very well established here. And the focus of this website is the Carolinas and Georgia, but it does go beyond that. But it's a local focus. It doesn't try to, to cover everything. It's just plants that are growing wild in this area. So how many of y'all have been to the website? Okay. I'm going to take you there now. I'm going to leave the PowerPoint, go to the website. So let me have just a minute to make a transition. Come on. Okay. Okay, here we are. Before I finish today, I'm going to try to touch on a number of the different features, but right now I'm just going to start by searching for a plant, because that's what most people do first. And you can search either here or over here. They both take you pretty much to the same place, but let's start out by common name. And I'm going to search for blue cohosh. So when you go to what I call a plant detail page, the first thing you probably notice are the pictures. And the pictures on this website are sorted by sequence. So ideally, you start out early in the year and you go on late in the year. So we may start out with just emerging leaves and get into flowers and then to fruit. And if you want to, these are like thumbnails on here, but if you want to see them up close, you know, you can hover over the picture and it'll get bigger. Or if you click on it, you can, you know, just leave it there and set it aside on your computer and then go to something else. There are words under the pictures. And sometimes, again, people will, you know, just kind of look at the pictures and ignore the words. But the words point out something that's in the picture that you might not notice, or I wouldn't notice, unless somebody pointed it out to me. It's like when you go on a field trip and you just look and you go, well, there's a flower and there's a flower, but I can't tell the difference. But if you've got somebody with you that really knows it, they can say, well, look at that and look at that, and you go, oh, I see. And now I wouldn't have been pointed it out to me. So that's what I try to do with the notes under the pictures. And those notes usually come from a book. So you can, if you want to find out more about the book that the note comes from, you can click that and read about the book. You may decide, I want to buy that book. And that's one of the things I'm trying to do on that, because sometimes there's some really good books, but your local bookstore might not have them because they're niche-y. I mean, you know, there's only a small audience that really goes for some of these titles, and a general bookstore can't carry all of that, but they'll be glad to order it for you. But if you know what you're looking for, you can tell them that's what I want. Sometimes the book, I'll try to use the words that the book uses in describing plants. Not always, I mean, it's not direct quotes, but sometimes that is botanical language that's unfamiliar to us. And so a couple reasons of doing that. One, when you can see the word and you see a picture of it, it helps me to learn. It's like children learn language with picture books. You see a picture and you see a word, you remember it longer than just reading it and learning a definition. But if you do want to see a definition, we do have a glossary. And you can click on any of those words to get a definition or a discussion. And then over here are links to other glossaries that are maybe more complete than this one. So you don't have an excuse for not looking the word up. If you want to see, let me see, okay. The book But then over here, there's a list of books that describe the plant, because there's only so much this website can show you. You want to read more, well, you've probably got some wildflower books at home, but this one has this plant and this one doesn't, and this one calls it by a different name. But so I've gone ahead and listed some books that I know of that discuss this plant and told you what page number it's on. So again, you don't have an excuse for, don't say I don't have time to look it up. It's looked up for you already. Over here in the gray part is more information about the plant, like when it blooms, how many petals or whatever. Right here, it's a general map as to where the plant is found, but if you click right here, it takes you to a website put out by the University of North Carolina, which gives you a county by county of where they have that plant documented. And if you go on up here, you'll see this tells you that it's native to the Carolinas and Georgia, fairly common but rare in the Piedmont and rare in South Carolina. Up here we've got the names, and again, if you want more information, if you click this Plants National Database, it takes you to the page, and this is a national database, and they'll have other information about it and more pictures. So all of that is just right there handy for you. And if you click this, now this probably isn't going to work. Well, it will work, but you won't hear it. But listen. Colophyllum thalictroides. Could you hear it? Okay. So whenever you see a little button like that, you can click it to learn how to pronounce the Latin. Don't you love it? Okay, so this time, down here in the notes under the pictures, it says the specific epithet, and that is the species name. It's Colophyllum thalictroides. Well, thalictroides means resembling thalictrum. So if you click that, the little compare, it takes you to other plants that the leaves look similar to the one we were just looking at. Because, when you look at them side by side, you can tell they're different. But if you're like me, you just see this one plant, and you can't remember why. You don't know which one of these things it is. You know it's one of these. It looks kind of like that, but it's nice to have it together so you can compare them. And even see little notes that tell you, okay, well, these leaflets go up to being 3-lobed, and somewhere over here, these one may have 9 lobes. Well, again, I might not have noticed that unless they pointed it out to me. Okay, now we're going to search for, instead of just searching for blue cohosh, I'm going to search just for cohosh. I'm still using common names. And we've got something here called white cohosh, but I usually call that doll's eyes. Black cohosh, and mountain black cohosh, and blue cohosh. Well, those are all common names. And you can see that the blue cohosh flowers are very much different than the others. But let's just do another quick comparison. Let's go leaves. And you can see that the blue cohosh leaves are quite much different than these others. And it does have little, again, the words point out some of the differences on the leaves. You can also see the fruit. Okay, that's why they call this one doll's eyes, because it really looks like a doll's eyes, the fruit does. And I guess that's why they call it blue cohosh, because the fruit is blue. But let's look a little bit at this black cohosh. And you'll notice on this one, on the blue cohosh, it was so nice, all the Latin names up there were the same. But on this one, we do have different Latin names. And the reason for that is that the botanists changed their mind, I guess. I mean, you know, but, you know, if you've got an old book, and a good many of the wildflower books that are on my shelf will use the old name. But the newer books will use the newer name, and they've done DNA studies and all this, and they, you know, oh, well, it looked like this, but it's really related to this, so we need to change the name. And I brought some of the references that those names are derived from. I mean, in the older one there that says Simistifuga racemosa, it is from this book, which came out in the 60s. And it's still considered almost a Bible in this area, but this is gradually replacing it, but it's much heavier and harder to carry. So, but the name in this book and on the Plants National Database is the Actea racemosa. So anyway, all I'm trying to say is that the website does give you synonyms, the older names and the newer names. And look how sometimes we'll have, okay, see, like this picture has black cohosh on the left and blue cohosh on the right. And then that's just another way of helping get in your mind how they look different. Okay, there's another one here. Okay, this is getting even more confusing. Black cohosh on the left, false goat's beard on the right. There are too many things that look alike. So here, click this compare. Compound leaves of woodland herbs with toothed margins. And that's all these, you know, when I'm out in the woods, all I know is it's one of these, but I can't, I can't remember or sort it out just from the leaves. But anyway, so that's why I put this here, so that y'all can compare them. And if you lock in on in your mind when you're at home studying these pictures and reading the stuff underneath it, you know, like, okay, goat's beard, the terminal leaf does not have any lobes. False goat's beard, it may have lobes. Okay. Anyway, these are little tips to help us. If you like these compare things, there's a whole page of them. These are the things that trip you up, or they trip me up, so I made a page out of them. Okay, I'm going to show you leaves of poison ivy and others confused with it. Well, you might not confuse kudzu with poison ivy, but there are times that it almost looks like it. Wafer ash does for sure. And all these things are poison ivy, even though they all look different. Then there's poison oak, and fragrant sumac, poison, let's see. And look at this, box elder. Doesn't that look like poison oak? Poison ivy? And of course, people always get Virginia creeper mixed up, but that's easy. But anyway, another one that I'm going to show you is, let's see. And these are fun just to go and play with. But this is sumac and tree of heaven. Now, sumac, there's several different species of sumac, but it's that, it's a wonderful native shrub, sometimes tree, and it's just beautiful in the fall. I don't know if you see some of the, let's see. But I thought in our yard where we live now, I thought that I had some really, really robust sumac. I mean, it was just getting so strong and tall, but I couldn't figure out which species it was. Well, it turned out it wasn't sumac at all. It was tree of heaven, which tree of heaven is an exotic plant. It's not native. It's native to East Asia. And not only is it not native, but it is invasive. And these are just a few of the authorities that are telling us that it is doing harm to natural areas. But honestly, I didn't know that that was an option because the books that I were looking at were native shrubs and trees, and they didn't include this, and I never thought to look. But if you want to tell, and at a glance, the leaves are, they kind of look the same. But the tree of heaven has these little, let's see. See that right there? And right there? That is a gland at the base of those leaflets. And that little knot in that little gland will tell you that's tree of heaven. That's not sumac. Cut it down. In fact, you can't cut it down. If you cut it down, it sprouts 100 more. So you need to do this special hack and squirt where you put a hatchet in it and squirt the herbicide into the bark so that it seeps down to the roots and kills it before it knows it's been wounded. Otherwise, if you just chop it down, the roots will all each sprout and they'll have anyway. So if you want more information about invasive plants, you can click this link, and that will take you to a page about invasives with links to sites that specialize in information about invasive plants. Let's see. I meant to show you something. Let's see, go back here. Well, anyway. Plant communities. One thing I meant to show you over there when we're on the plant detail page and I was looking at the little map, right above it, it has a description of the plant community that plant can be found in. And sometimes there are notes there and you click those and it'll take you to these pages. And these are pages that describe particular wildflower communities. And so, like if you live in the mountains or the Piedmont or near a rock outcrop or a spring or whatever. But I meant to point this out earlier, so I'm a little out of sequence. But we also have articles of interest, and that is just articles that might be, once you start browsing on this thing, you'll find other things to look at. But like dandelions, okay? You see a dandelion, well, it might be a real dandelion, or it might be something that looks like a dandelion, because there's several that look kind of alike. And this tells you some of the differences between it. You can also search by scientific name. And these are some other plants that are not dandelions, but the flowers kind of look dandelion-like. And they all kind of look alike except for that one. But again, if you use this little tool, the leaves will be quite different. And so you got to remember not just to look at flowers when you're trying to tell things apart. You can also search by family. And I'm going to search for this example. I'm going to go to the orchid family. And this can just be a fun thing to do too, because it's interesting to see what all the different plants look like within a family. But these, the lady slippers, those are orchids. Showy orchis, the fringed orchids. I mean, these things are just beautiful. And these are native orchids that grow wild in our area, which I just, I think it's just marvelous. You see that one? Okay, one more way I'm going to show you how to search, and that is by plant description. And this is where you just answer questions. And I wish this would take you, I could promise you it would take you all the way to your plant, but it won't, but it'll get you started. But I'm going to just search for vine and see what happens. Well, I get 159 vines, and that's way too many to look at. Let's go back. Let's see, we saw it in the mountains, and the flower is red. It blooms in the spring. Well, now we're down to 8. Well, I mean, maybe you can figure it out from 8. I mean, that's helpful. Let me show you one other thing. Keys. I don't know how many of y'all have gotten into trying to use plant keys. Okay. To most of us, they're pretty intimidating. And sometimes even when you come out successful, you've actually found the plant, it's like being in a maze blindfolded, and you go step by step, and then you come out and you're where you need to be, but you don't know how you got there. Well, I've started a series of keys on this website that they're based on other people's keys that are the type of key that they build an architecture in your mind so that you come out with natural groupings. You might come away from that knowing what your plant is, but you also come away with, well, there's 3 groups within this category, and you can hang your species within a group, and it just makes it so much easier. Instead of 42 trilliums, I only need to look at 12. Well, that's easier to find something. So this is a key to asters, and if you know asters, those are not easy to figure out. It's not going to be easy even with this key, but it's fun. Okay, so we have it grouped by inflorescence, which is the way the flowers are grouped or clustered. What color, and we're saying either kind of blue or white. And we have different types of leaves. Well, Inflorescence, well, I don't know what panicle, raceme, or corymb mean. Well, you can click the link and go read the definition. Or you can just click the picture and look at the difference. Okay, so that's a corymb. Top, even connections at the bottom. And that's a panicle. Go read the definition. But anyway, you can see the picture. Or singly. Okay, so then we go, the leaves, okay, they have clasping bases. And see the little notch there where the blade of the leaf actually kind of goes back around the stem just a little bit. They call that a clasping base. So are the leaves clasping? Are they, heart-shaped and on a stalk? Are they tapered and right up to the stem? Or are they kind of grass-like? So, and you notice that the list of plants changes with each selection here. So if you want to look at these, you click Submit, and that'll take you to a list of plants like you got the other ways. So, I've touched on several of the website's features, and what I want to do next, I'm going to change gears slightly and show you or tell you about a few ways that people I know have used the website. This is fun, but what's the point? It's kind of like if you want to learn it and you are interested in it, but then how can you use that? What can you do with that knowledge? Oh dear, sorry about that. Yeah, maybe so. Where am I? Here we go. Where am I? Okay, let me see. Okay, now I'm back to PowerPoint, and I want to tell you a few ways that people have used this site that I'm aware of. And the three ways that I'm going to talk about could all be grouped under the category of citizen science. And Wikipedia defines citizen science as scientific research conducted in whole or in part by amateur or non-professional scientists. And then end quote. No single scientist or team of scientists can hope to accumulate the kind of data that an interested and informed citizenry can provide. And we're used to birders doing bird counts. And we know, that we're accustomed to that, but we kind of aren't aware of the fact that the observations that we, an interested and informed citizenry, can provide the botanical scientist can also be useful. It was a PCA mom who discovered a bunched arrowhead in the woods behind her son's elementary school in Travelers Rest. Now, that plant is considered to be globally imperiled. It's only known to grow in 2 or 3 counties in the world. And she found a population that was previously undocumented. And this population was getting abused because the parking lots and the school playing fields, the runoff from those fields was crashing into the woods and just really damaging the plants. And because of her discovery, now they've re-diverted the parking lot water and they've done a lot of work, so those plants are now going to be protected. But she was just an interested person, you know, who tracked down what that plant was. This plant, Carolina crownbeard, was, I know two landowners, one in Spartanburg, one in Greenville, both of whom were curious about this plant they'd never seen before. It was just unfamiliar. It was growing on their property. And it turns out that, you know, it's not supposed to grow up here. It's weird. I mean, it grows there and it grows down on the coast. And we don't have Greenville and Spartanburg counties on the map yet, and I think y'all have got it around here. But what's going on? I mean, in the 60s, it wasn't known but on the coast. And now it's popping up in some odd places. Now, is this global warming? Is this, why? But unless it's reported, I mean, the botanists don't have the purview to go into each of y'all's property and see, oh, well, you've got this plant that I didn't know was there. I mean, you've got to see it and tell somebody, or else they won't know. So it's just interesting. It's just data to be collected. And this is the third example that I want to tell you about. And this is one that I'd like you to pay a little closer attention to because it's scary. And this birder goes down to Lake Honesty, and sometimes he looks at birds and sometimes he looks at plants. And he saw this plant and he didn't know what it was. Well, this plant is, it's not supposed to be here. It's the first time it had been found in the state. The name of it is, the Latin is Ficaria verna. Used to be called Ranunculus ficaria, which is a kind of buttercup. And commonly called fig buttercup or lesser celandine. It's been cultivated in North America for over 150 years. Wordsworth wrote poems in praise of it. It's derived from Europe, Northern Africa. And the maps don't currently show it as being down here in the southeast. So consequently, most of the southeastern botanists, it's not even on the radar. I mean, it's not part of our flora, so nobody's looking for it. Nobody knows to look for it. But this is a letter from Alan Weekly, the curator of University of North Carolina Herbarium. And this, I'm just going to read it. This plant is seriously on the move. It's one of those somewhat mysterious plants that's been cultivated for a long time, but recently has become aggressive. And it's starting to naturalize outside the garden. But it comes up so early, and it grows, it's carried along streams, and so these urban creeks and all, where these will have a little natural area in an urban creek, you know, that's not generally where botanists are doing their field studies. You know, that's where y'all might go. But anyway, nobody's looking. It's also a very early plant. It comes up like in December, and it's gone very quickly. So they say that it's transitioned out of the lag phase of population growth, so it's been going like this, and now it's you know, jumping up. We have found it. It is being found popping up into the southeast, But we don't really know where all it is because, like I say, people haven't been looking for it. I'm just going to give y'all some mug shots to put in your mind so that you'll be aware of it and you can spot it. I also brought some samples to show you too. So it comes up very early. Once it's established, it has a solid carpet that no native can penetrate. That carpet, when it's in bloom, looks like a green carpet with yellow polka dots. The flowers have kind of a darker center, generally 8 petals, but that can vary. The roots have finger-like tubers, and that's probably one of the most definitive ways to tell it. These are some plants that were dug up in Greenville County where the birders saw them. And you look at those tubers. This plant was dug up in Rockville. 5 subspecies in a little bit. Any one of those tubers, if broken off, can be a new plant. And whenever I was washing these, just to show you, I washed them in a colander because the colander got full of these little, they just break off so brittly. So if you have some in the garden and you're digging them up, you're going to leave all these little tubers that will come up. 2 of the 5 subspecies have axillary bulbils, which are bulbils that will be in the axil between the stem and a leaf. And any one of those bulbils will also come up. So the plant can reproduce in 3 ways. It's a scary plant. and nothing can penetrate, either the leaves or that thick tangle of tubers. It's pretty easy to spot that. But sometimes, before it's really established, you might not notice that. It's just a little cluster of leaves. After you start looking, you get to where you can kind of spot it. But it's a basal rosette, which is, the leaves come up from the ground and they all come out kind of like a little, Sam, define basal rosette. I mean,
I think you're doing a better job. They tend to lie flat, pressed on the ground, in a circular form.
Yeah, it's like a little crown of leaves, just all coming out from the same point. There's one plant that when I'm looking for it, especially early on when it's not blooming yet, I get confused with it. And that's the innocent little weedy kidney leaf buttercup. And the leaves kind of resemble one another, but the underside of the fig buttercup, see how the netted venation on that was just so obvious. So it looked reptilian to us. And it did. I mean, it really helped us to tell the difference between that and that. And also, you don't really see a midvein, but you can feel it. Can you see the shadow there, kind of, where that petiole, that leaf stalk, goes into the leaf blade? And even though the leaves vary somewhat, they all seem to have, that I've seen, have that reptilian pattern. It has a very short life cycle. So this was May 1st. It's already turning yellow. Mid-May, early June, the only thing that was left were these bulbils on the ground. And it was just a bare spot. Each one of those bulbils That's what it was doing this a couple of weeks ago. They were sprouting. It's normally found adjacent to water, a creek, a river, a floodplain. I would add to that a creek that flows through a residential area or a town, because we found where we found this was in Lake Conestee Nature Park, where that Reedy River flows through Greenville, and then it opens up in the park in a floodplain, and we found it up here and down here and a little bit over here. But that was over a mile and a half were scattered patches. If you ever get a note like this from a friend, don't answer it. The plant is often confused with marsh marigold, which is a rare native plant. They both have, the leaves are similar, they both have yellow flowers. But if somebody has some in their garden and they're spreading, it's not marsh marigold. And you need to talk to him. But this guy realized shortly after we discovered our find of plants, that the plants in his yard were indeed fig buttercup. And he took steps to destroy those in his yard, and he said, there's a creek runs through my yard, I'm concerned, you know. So we checked out that creek. This is where he lives. And we checked, the creek flows through some other houses, goes through a culvert under a road, down here, and we found the plant here, half mile downstream. That's what the creek looked like. We found it in Rock Hill along another urban creek. And this was, you know, that was it. It hadn't established like some of those big expanses, but it was there, which is scary. Plant is still for sale. It's declared invasive in 10 states. It's illegal. It's banned in 2, but it's still legal in most of the country. And but like I said, we don't know where it is. We're trying to get it declared invasive in the southeast because it's definitely acting invasively. We're trying to get it illegal. But first of all, we need people to look for it and report their findings, because until people start saying it's here, nobody pays any attention. So if you think you see it, take a good picture, send it to one of these 2 guys. Don't send it to both of them, they're busy.
Do you know if it's edible?
John Nelson ate the roots. He said they didn't taste very good. I think it's been used for hemorrhoids. But, you know, you can read about it.
What's the best way to
The best herbicide, like a Roundup thing, that, and if it's near water, they recommend that it be a water approved. Can you say the word glyphosate? Glyphosate. I mean, the chemical that's in Roundup is they need something, a wetland approved version of that, because so often you're going to find these plants near water, and that's how they spread. So to spray it needs to be early, because once it starts blooming, that's when it's easiest to see. After that blooming period, they say the efficacy, am I saying that right, starts going downhill, because the plant starts dying very quickly, as I showed you how it turns yellow very quickly and then just vanishes. You won't even see leaves. You won't see anything that lets you know that plant was there.
So Janie, we would be likely to, if we saw it, we would be likely to see it in January, February, the flowers?
The flowers, the pictures that I showed you, April 9th. So I think late March, early April would be when you'd see the flowers. The plants in Greenville and Rock Hill, or in Greenville, they came up in December. So, but they're little then. They're easier to see now than they were in January, but the flowers is going to be late March, early April, and that's when it's going to be easiest to spot. But that's when you have such a little time to do anything about it, because that's one of the things that makes it so hard to deal with. Because by the time you notice it, it's gone. I mean, or by the time, in one case, we had a grad student who saw it in the Smokies. Well, she didn't know what it was. She took a picture. She took it back, showed it to Alan Weekly, and he identified it. And then she emailed the folks, the rangers. Well, a month had gone by. So she saw it April 8th. She emailed them May 11th. They went to look. They said, well, we can't find it. Well, it was gone. I mean, it just is, it's scary. Anyway.
Digging it up would be counterproductive for spreading it.
If you have a very, very little bit and you're very careful, you can dig it up and just make sure you get all the little bulblets and tubers. And then I would put it in a plastic bag and I would spray that bag with Roundup, because our friend here that had the plants in his yard, he dug them up and he put them in a plastic bag, and you don't want to take it to the landfill because, I mean, they could sprout there. I feel like I've got radioactive material, So he kept them in the bag, and he kept waiting for them to die, and he said, it's been a year and now they're sprouting in the bag. So I guess, you've got to spray them in the bag. But I mean, but if you're, they do say though that sometimes just the digging of them up can encourage them rather than kill them. But I think, I've got the samples here. I'll put them up here in the next book. And I think I'm through talking, unless you've got any questions.
You want to let people know, too, about the South Carolina Native Plant Society books you have available?
The books over there are from the inventory of the South Carolina Native Plant Society. So the profit from those books goes to the upstate chapter of the South Carolina Native Plant Society. We are selling them for less than the list price. Might not be quite as good as you can get from Amazon, but it's in between there. My husband Steve is taking the money for those. I've got some handouts up there that I forgot to put out earlier. We've got a plant sale coming up in April if anybody wants to plant plants, or even I find it's just fun to go and look at them. And let me put these samples over here. So, yes.
How big is your database? This is so impressive.
How big as in how many plants or how many gigabytes?
Plants.
I think it's about 3,000 plants and maybe 11,000 is some pictures, something like that. I'm not sure. I started in earnest in 2003. And it was 3 years, 2.5 years. It was 2006 that I put it up for the first time. Because it took that long just to get it enough to where it was something that anybody could use. And of course I've been adding on. You never finish a project like this. I mean, it's not a project that I would take on lightly. I had no idea what I was getting into when I started.
How long have you been working on it?
Well, since 2003, so.
Are you the only one that works on it?
I'm the only one that works on it, but, you know, photographers will contribute their photographs, or, you know, all these nice people that I email and I say, what's this? You know? So there's a lot of other people whose expertise is incorporated in it, but it's not, I mean, getting it from their heads into the computer, it goes through these fingers. So.
What you've done is incredible and wonderful and a gift.
Thank you.